So I got my friend, Robert Rhine. This man has done everything in the entertainment industry. He's been a writer. He's been an actor. He's published Girls and Corpses magazine. He has a website. He's made movies. Just about everything he can possibly do. But I want to talk to him a little bit about being a publicist, because every musician and artist and actor and just about any celebrity of any sort needs to have good publicity, and it's people called publicists that do that for them. Robert, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, except for, the other stuff going on in the world. But other than that, steady as she goes, man.
Well, I think eventually we're going to get to the other side of those other issues. And when we do, I believe that people are going to be clamoring for new things to do.
I will say this. Coronavirus has a great publicist, because they are really dominating the press. So that's my lesson for today.
Well,
call your band Coronavirus, and you'll do really, really well.
You'll get a lot of press.
You get a lot of press.
Well, but, actually, yeah. What, in a nutshell, when somebody says, I have a publicist, or you need a publicist, or this is my publicist, what are they talking about? What does that person do in a nutshell?
Well, publicity, it's a whole course. It's a hard thing to do in just one podcast. But if you say you have a publicist, a personal publicist, that means you are paying them to promote something that you want to make money off of. So there are two different thoughts in publicity. One is your own aggrandizement, your own personal getting the word out about how cool you are and what you're doing. The problem with that is it doesn't necessarily make any money. For me, publicity is all about making money. So in other words, if you have a record coming out, and since you're in the music business and you are promoting your own wonderful stuff you do, Quentin, if you have a record coming out, well, that's the time you want to do publicity. So you want to turn the publicity into cash. Otherwise, I don't quite understand the purpose of it. People want to keep their name out there, and maybe that'll lead to other work. But if you watch talk shows and even radio shows, it always has been that the person comes on because they're promoting something. No actor or star goes on a TV show just to chat. They're all going because they have a movie opening in 2 days. So they turn that interview into money. They'll show a clip, and so that's what they do. So now your question is when you hire a publicist. So there are several levels of publicists. You might have a personal publicist, but the record company would also have a publicist. And that publicist would work in conjunction with the personal publicist. But let's say your band, Quentin, you've got 4 different guys in the band. And one of the guys in the band is thinking, well, they're going to, use Quentin to push all this through the record company publicist. They're going to talk about Quentin, but I want things to talk about me. So they hire a personal publicist, and they could spend, anywhere from, about $1,000 to $2,000 a month to promote them. And so there's a little bit of a battle between the promotion that the record company would be doing to, say, promote Quentin Jones, and the personal publicist who's going to promote the other person. As I said, this is, not quick and easy stuff to understand, because, there's a lot of layers to it, and there's a lot of different kinds of publicists. And I have been everything from a book author publicist to a celebrity publicist, and then to a studio publicist and a unit publicist. So I thought maybe what I would do is just give you an idea of how I started out in publicity, because this is one facet to what I do in my career. Now, the publicity background I have helps with everything. It helps with the books and magazines that I have. My background helps with the films that I am now making. So my background helps a lot. But I started in my publicity career at USC Film School. I took a course from Max Weinberg. He was the president of the Publicist Guild at that time.
Right.
And I took a course from him in film publicity. And one of the projects was that you had to do a film campaign for an existing film. And he was on a movie, I think it was called Happy Birthday Wanda June, something like that. And the whole class did the project. So I did the publicity campaign, and he liked it so much that he took it to the studio. They said I was better than the person that did the publicity campaign for the studio. So that's how I started with Max Weinberg. And today, Max Weinberg is, when they do the Publicist Guild Awards, Max Weinberg is the big award everybody gets after he passed away. So I started with him, but then right out of school, I got a job as a book publicist. And back when people used to read books many years ago.
Right.
And at that time, radio and TV, I would set up interviews with the author on radio and TV shows. And back then, I would charge per venue. So let's say back then, if I got a radio show for a author, I'd charge him $50 to do the radio interview. If I got him a TV show, he'd pay me $100. And because you're in the music business, I'll tell you something you didn't even know about me, but there was a movie called a book called The Platinum Rainbow. And it was about the music business. And it became a very successful book. I'm sure you can still see The Platinum Rainbow out there. And I was hired to be their publicist. So they were paying me $50 a radio station and $100 for a TV show. And within a few months, they fired me. And the reason they fired me isn't because I was doing a bad job. It was because I was doing a great job. And I got them so much work on TV interviews and radio that they couldn't afford me anymore because that was the deal I made. And they would have been better to pay me a flat rate than pay per venue. So I put them on, because when you start doing radio shows, there's, thousands of radio stations around the country.
Right. So let me ask you something. So, okay. So you're telling me with this particular case, you would actually go to the Today Show or a TV show and say, I have a book called such and such and such, and the author, we'd like to get him on TV. Is that correct? Is that what you would do? Or is that something like an agent would do? Or do you work in conjunction?
No, don't. It has nothing. The agent, when you're a talent, if you're an actor, you have a team. And the team would be the agent, the manager, the publicist, and perhaps a business manager. Okay. They all do different things. The agents find you jobs. The manager guides your career, but also finds you jobs. But the publicist is really just supposed to get your name and promote your product or yourself out there. So, what was the rest of your question?
It's their job to get you in the papers, the magazines, the website,
correct.
And on the TV show to get you the interview and stuff. Is that correct? Right. That would fall as one of the things your publicist should be trying to do for you, right?
Now the tricky part is, let's say, Quentin, you're my client, and I want to get you on these shows. Now, it's not just you being promoted in the world. There's 10,000 other or more than that musicians trying to get the word out there. So then becomes the creative part of the job. How do I get Quentin onto these radio and TV shows? How do I separate him from the bunch? And that's where a publicist's talent and ability comes into play, because they have to come up with a kind of a pitch or a hook to get that person on the show. And then that hook or that pitch would be presented to the radio TV station via a press release. And a press release is a very specific kind of document that gets sent to all these different stations. And there's a specific way of writing it, and it's a whole thing about how a press release goes out. Now, alternately, if I'm a good publicist, I know a lot of these people. So, I could call them if I'm a good publicist and say, hey, I've got Quentin Jones, but, I've also got this other big star, who, no offense, Quentin, is a bigger name, and if you take Quentin, I'll give you this other guy. So there's a lot of that stuff that goes on. But those are the two ways you do it. Press release goes out, or you call personal contacts. And there's a thing in the old days. I don't know if they call it the same way, but they're called markers. So let's say you have, Tom Cruise is your client. Someone calls up USA Today, wants to do a big feature on Tom Cruise. And, Tom Cruise, you can get press anywhere. They say, look, I'll give you an interview with Tom Cruise, but I have this up-and-coming young guy or girl, the new talent, and I want you to run a feature on them too. I'm going to give at some point. So here's Tom Cruise, but, we got a marker. Someday I'm going to call you, and you're going to owe me a favor. So there's a lot of that goes on in the business, a lot of negotiation. So the thing you want to hire a publicist for is to write a press release unless you have the ability to do a press release. But then it comes down to what the hook is, okay? The hook on someone is, you kind of would need, like I would sit down with the client, Quentin Jones, and find out about his life. I want to find out something, some cause he's involved in, which is good, something about his life that's unusual, something I can use in a press release that won't just say, Quentin Jones has a new record coming out, blah, 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 blah. No one gives a shit. No offense. They don't. They need a hook. Now, unless they're a huge talent. So then you got to come up with the hook. And that's where a publicist can come up with crazy fun things that would make it interesting. You could, I'm just going to, Quentin Jones at noon on Sunday is going to play stark naked up top of the bank in downtown, Pittsburgh. There'll be press showing up for that, So
Gotcha.
there's all sorts of things. Back in the old days, I don't want to date myself, but they used to call publicists, they called them flacks, Flacks, flacks. Because in World War II, when the pilots and they were flying over enemy territory, they would shoot up towards those planes, and they were called flak jackets to help from the bullets that they could take from underneath. And sometimes they would sit on the flak jackets on the plane so they wouldn't get a bullet up their ass, right?
Right.
So that's another thing is that, publicists have to protect people, and that's a whole other huge part of the job. So there's positive press and then there's negative press. So that, there's some skills involved, and I happen to be really good at it at that time. I started out as a book author, handling all these big authors, and then I went to work for another guy who was handling talent, and I became vice president of that company. And some of my clients were Michael J. Fox, who was just starting his career. Literally had just come to LA, and I would hang out with him and drink beer, and he played hockey, and but as an example, where's the hook to that? So I came up with the idea of always putting him in a tie. No matter what interview, whatever, he'd be wearing a tie. I know that sounds rather simple, but it matched his character, this conservative character. So, and he played hockey. So what do? You go do a photo shoot at a hockey ring with Michael J. Fox. But I had other clients at that time. Joan Rivers was a client back then. Kristie Alley was a client. And also I handled TV shows. So sometimes a TV show would have an in-house publicity, but one of the actresses, for instance, Facts of Life was one of the shows back then. Lisa Welchel hired me to be her personal publicist. So there was a publicist on Facts of Life, and then I, went and handled her as well. And this is true of many, many TV shows that I worked on. So I worked as a personal publicist, did that for a few years, promoting. What is that?
That's my phone. Somebody just texted me. I'm sorry. And my phone was right by the microphone. My telephone was right by the microphone. I'm sorry. It was actually an ex-wife. It's actually an ex-wife, Robert.
Yeah, move that phone away.
I am. She probably wants something out of me.
So,
sorry.
Going back, so I was handling talent and, going to all their events, riding in their limos, going to the Spago Christmas parties and being a big shot. And then I made a transition into studio publicity. And I wound up working for Universal Studios, Columbia TriStar, did a film with DreamWorks. But and anyhow, that job was as a unit publicist, and that's a whole nother area of publicity. It is a unit publicist is the publicist to the unit, meaning you're attached to a film, and then you go on the road, you sit on location for X amount of weeks or months and promote the movie, and that is a whole huge job, which my background working with celebrities and authors, but also then then you protect the movie and you're doing publicity for the movie and you have to deal with everyone's personal publicist. So you have to deal with that too. And unit publicity is a whole crazy job because you become sort of a security person there, helping people from all the outside interference during the movie. You have to be a liaison to all the local city people, the government, the governor, the mayor, the police department, and you have to do, in many cases, your stars don't want to do interviews, so I would be interviewed by every newspaper around talking about all this great money we've brought to the area. So, that's sort of my background in a nutshell. And then finally, I was doing movies on the road. I did this movie Tremors. I did a movie called The Craft. I did a movie called Problem Child. I did a film. So I was doing this for like a decade. I did a movie that ended my publicity career in Europe called Double Team. And it was with a movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme, Mickey Rourke, and Dennis Rodman. And I was also producing the European portion of the show called Rodman's World. So, because Rodman's World was a show following around this nutcase Dennis Rodman. And then I had to be there in Europe, so when the crews came, I had to coordinate with them so they could film the movie. But that movie was such a nightmare for me that I had an epiphany and decided I was done. And that's when I became a writer, an author of both books that went to, bookstores and graphic novels and comic books. And now it led to my career of Girls and Corpses magazine, making a transition into Girls and Corpses Presents Films, where we have two films that we've sole financed. One is Cynthia, which your audience can watch, 2018, starring Bill Moseley and Sid Haig and Scout Taylor Compton, Robert Lasardo. Really fun movie. And another movie I have coming out called Exorcism at 60,000 Feet, which will be released May 5th by Shout Factory. And that stars Lance Henriksen and Adrienne Barbeau and Bill Moseley and all sorts of violins in it. It's an amazing movie. So that's sort of my career in a nutshell. But,
who you want to get to promote? Who did you hire a publicist for these, or will you do it in-house?
Well, I don't have to hire a publicist because I am one.
Right.
So I know how to do the releases. And I said, to be a good producer, now that I'm producing movies, and I've produced those two movies under the Girls and Corpses label, but I've exec produced about another 8 movies for other people and whatnot. But what makes you a good producer is knowing a little bit about everybody, what they do. And I remember I worked with Gail Hurd on Tremors. I met her, and I was the publicist on that film, and she had done a bit of every job in the business. So she could drive you nuts because she knew exactly what a publicist should do and what should be happening. It makes you a very good producer because no one can pull anything over your eyes. And she's a very bright, strong woman. So anyhow, that's sort of it. But if your people listening to this have something they want to promote, think of publicity that way rather than how do I make myself famous. What you're trying to do is sell something. So the closer you can get to that thing that is coming out that you can sell, you want someone to read an article, if you're lucky enough to get an article in a great place about your band. But at the end of the article or part of it, you really need them to say, and now you can order their DVD or CD or whatever the hell it is. You can order it right now. So that's why publicity is so effective. And I'll tell you another thing that I think will really help people understand this. Back in the days of newspapers, and everything's online now, so it's a little different, but let me go back to when people used to have newspapers in their hands. When you look at a newspaper or a magazine, okay, there are paid ads, right? When you look at a magazine, there are paid ads for hair products and outfits and all this stuff. And when you read a magazine, what do? You flip past that stuff. You don't want to look at that. You want to look at, the pictures in the magazine or whatever. So whoever's paying for those ads, they get very short shrift. It's like, maybe at 2 seconds they're passing by that ad. But if you can do the same thing as a publicist and get an article, people will read the article. So let's say you had a record coming out, Quentin, for your band, and you pay to put an ad in a music magazine. People will more readily pass by that than if they do read an article. And the beauty of it is it's cheaper because an ad might cost you anywhere from $500 to $10,000 for that page. A publicist, that's just one of many things they would get you that's under your retainer that you pay them. So publicity is more effective than advertising. I'm going to get in trouble for that, but I believe that's true.
Well, see, it's a very interesting thing. When bands are starting out, like I often say to a young band or somebody who is just young in the terms of the business, I'll say, people that have a hot dog push cart put more thought and more money into their project than a musician or an actor. Yes. They just, a lot of actors and musicians think because of their talent's going to get them through. And I say, every band you've ever heard of, every CD you've ever bought, any movie you've ever watched, those people had a team behind them, and I'm so happy you said that at the beginning. They had a publicist, they had an agent, they had a manager, they had a business manager, and it wasn't just happenstance. They had a plan. And it's also awesome that you're saying and you're telling people, and I try to do this too, like when people write a bio or on their press kit, they try to cover way too much information as where it needs to be more specific to, band, CD, out now, or, movie coming out, as opposed to a branding type of a thing. Would you say that's right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The power is that, you just think that publicity should make money. It should turn to money. You're making an investment of, the $1,500 for that month. And by the way, some people keep their publicists on all the time. They're their publicists. Well, I think it's ridiculous. If you don't have something to sell, why are you paying a full-time publicist? They're not going to be able to get enough stuff, and it's useless, But I think the trick, the hardest thing for people to do is come up with the hook that makes them different. So you have to look at your life. I used to say at the top of my career, I could take anybody out there, and I could get them press. Because I would talk to them, and I would find out that their grandmother worked like a Rosie the Riveter building airplanes during World War II, right? And so that's a hook. So, now I would probably take, if it was a girl, I'd put her in a Rosie the Riveter outfit. And I would, with the thing, a lot of people don't know who that is. Although it's funny because nowadays we need Rosie the Riveter to build these machines.
That's right.
These ventilators. But I would put her in that outfit, and I would say, granddaughter of Rosie the Riveter is still, firing rivets with her new album. I don't know. I mean, I think you have to come up with something because when you're a media source, you're looking for stuff that makes people interested to want to look at it. They're looking for stories. The news is looking for stories. So much that's on TV, not right now because we're under the pandemic world. But when you hear things on the news, a publicist sent that in very often. Oh, it's news? Well, maybe. Let's say there's a murder, okay? Well, there's two sides to that murder, and who's going to jump on the publicity first? I know that sounds nuts, but maybe the murderer that has been accused of murder hires a publicity firm to clean up their image. Harvey Weinstein, he wasn't a murderer, but Harvey Weinstein, he had a whole team of people. So he would get the story out, Harvey Weinstein, about, whatever, something to protect him before the other side, because they're going to go for the same news source. So when you're watching TV at night, I could point out to you ones that came in through a publicist. And I've called stories into the news and things like that as well. But, as I said, this is a class more than just a podcast.
Right, I understand. I just wanted to give people a general, a quick, brief outline. And with that said, what would you let's say you're, you're somebody who doesn't have a big name and they're looking for a publicist. What are the questions or what are the things they should be asking a publicist just to make sure that they're getting someone that knows what they're doing, as opposed to someone who's just looking for a quick check out of an unsuspecting band?
Something just came to my mind. It's one of my pet peeves, but it will teach you how to read people's websites. When you see a website and someone says, I'm an entertainment publicist with vast experience handling movies and TV shows, some of the biggest names in the business, and I've been doing this for 30 years and been extremely successful in, working with these. Why haven't they named anything?
Right.
Look at what they're naming, not what they're saying. A lot of people, I've got, I have great instincts and this, I don't give a shit. I don't care that you think you're a big shot. Name who it is. Name the bands that you've been a publicist for. And then if they name that, well, you want to check that out. You have to do your due diligence on the publicist, because you're going to be paying them. And once again, don't ever walk into a publicist without something to promote. Don't ever walk in and say, I'm a band, and then they'll take your money. They'll be happy to take, I'll promote your career, because once they get your retainer, well, they're obligated to try, but they're not obligated to get you stuff, right? That's why when I did the job where I charged people per gig, well, they thought, well, hell, that's a great, no retainer? That's fabulous. But after I got them 100 interviews, they're like, thanks, Robert, great job, but Jesus, it's costing us $5,000. We could have just hired you on a retainer for, $500.
Right.
So that was my, so the first thing for a young band or young band member, if you don't have a deal, you don't have a deal with a company, you don't have a record coming out, you don't have something to sell, you're going to have a higher uphill battle. And doing an interview to just promote that, hey, you're Billy Bob in Alabama and you're the best banjo player in the world, it doesn't really do anything because you're not selling anything. But if you go into your studio and you record a banjo CD, even if it's not with a studio, but you make a really great CD and you've got something great like some crazy story, the True Deliverance story. And people don't know what Deliverance is either. Go see that movie. That was a great movie.
Yes, it was.
Right? So,
right.
You have to come up with, first think you have something to sell, because if you go to any publicist and you don't have something to sell and they're saying they can get you publicity, they're lying. It's a bunch of bullshit. The real ones want to know, well, what are you promoting? What's coming out? Who's putting it out? Is it a record, a CD? Are you going on tour? Tour thing's great, One of the things in publicity that is the easiest part of publicity is if you're from Keokuk, Iowa, and you're going to go to Keokuk, Iowa, and you're going to sing, you're going to appear in Iowa. Well, you hit every Keokuk, Iowa newspaper, and I guarantee you're going to get coverage because you're from there. So one of the biggest publicity things is where you're at, where you're from. You're a bigger star in a smaller pond. You're my God, you grew up in Keokuk, Iowa, and now you're doing a concert date there? Unbelievable. Let's talk about, there's just a lot of different ways to try to do these things, to try to promote yourself. But you have a very good question, is how do you know? So when you're looking at hiring a publicist, this is something you want to meet with in person from your area if possible, someone that you can, because there's a lot of con people. This is show business, man. People will take your money. It's just, they'll take it. You just won't get any publicity.
Right.
Or, they tried really hard or they need another month. We're just getting things going, So remember, one, have something to sell. Concert, CD, DVD, something, it could be something else. Let's say you created a t-shirt and it's very, great concept for a t-shirt. It's something that will get news, something about the pandemic or whatever. I don't know, something. Well, that's something to sell, right? Because you need to sell something, right? Isn't this about making money? Look, you can go out and do free concerts and all that, and I'm all for art, and I love that, but, you know, are you an artist until you make money? I know it's a really debatable question. If no one's paid to ever see anything you've done, are you an artist? Are you a struggling artist? Are you an unsuccessful artist? Are you undiscovered artist? Who are you?
Are you a hobbyist?
Are you a hobbyist?
I say, are you a musician or a hobbyist? There's nothing wrong with being a hobbyist.
No.
But don't right. But
yeah.
don't expect, you know, don't expect to do the musician stuff, you know. So
getting in this business, and I'm talking to you, Quentin, who've known a lifetime of struggle.
Right.
How incredibly difficult this is. How many people want it. And, you know, some people want it for the fame. You know, a lot of rock guys get chicks and all, you know, the drugs, to get through it. And I think you brought up a point earlier about guys that like, hey, I'm the best guitarist in the country and no one
right.
knows. Because there's a business. It's show business. You gotta know the business. You know, so if you're the best guitarist in the country, well, that's great. So get with a freaking band.
Right.
You know, send your, you know, don't get a publicist. Send your tape out to every great band that you want to be with. Send a demo out. You know, I mean, you gotta work it, man. It's a whole lifetime of struggle. And I've been in this business since I was a kid. I acted as a kid. I worked in casting for years. When I was a teenager, I was doing casting sessions for the top casting people in LA. I've worked, and I worked doing, you know, commercials. I was what do they call them? They were a utility. Okay, so on commercials they had a utility person, so someone to, you know, be their schlepper and all this stuff. So that job included getting up at 3 a.m, driving over to to Diamond Bakery or whatever, and getting the pastries and the coffee. And you better freaking have that there at 5 a.m. when the Teamsters show up, or they will give you shit all day. You just, you know, and so I've always worked my ass off. I've done every kind of crazy job, like you said, but it all comes together as a producer. So having worked as an actor, and I continue to work as an actor. I've been killed in 24 movies, so I'm pretty happy with that. So, you know, you got to keep it going. And by being able to write and produce and act and stuff, I can keep, you know, juggling these different projects. I have another movie in post right now. I have a movie that I was going to do over in Asia, and when the pandemic hit, so I was pretty disappointed about that. But I think publicity is something to know about when you want to, you know, you have something to sell. And then interview a lot of, you know, talk to different publicists. But look, now we can look people up. I mean, I would go on their Facebook page, you know, find them out. Look at their Twitter feed. Look at their friends. See if this is, you know, bullshit. And once again, always read between the lines. If the guy isn't saying what he's done, just sort of this gravy of, I'm the greatest and I did this and wonderful. I know everything and everybody in the business. So, you know, name one.
Right.
Just name one. And I get resumes from people, same thing, you know. One of the top, you know, I'm a cinematographer, worked on some amazing projects. My focus is the best focus. And I'm like, just name the last film you worked on, just so I know, you know, I can do. So check people out. Check them out.
You know something, it's funny. I see as on musicians when they write their bios, they'll say things like, you know, I've been in the business, all this vague stuff, just what you're saying. And I have always, since I was 16, if I knew there was a local guy that was bigger than me and had something going on and was really good, you know, I would go and find out what they were doing. And I kept finding myself trying to, you know, work with people that had substance so I could say, I work with this person. I work with that person.
You do great. You do great. And when you list your credits and you
right off the
Charlie
top.
Gracie,
Right.
Charlie Gracie, unbelievable. That gives you credibility. If you said, well, I worked with some of the greatest 50s musicians you'd ever want to meet. It's like,
now,
but you can't name one. Fuck, man.
On the other hand, and sometimes people will say, oh, you're dropping names. I'm like, yeah, it's called, like you said, it's show business. But on the other hand, I've seen guys who have done things like, for instance, Charlie Gracie took me on tour when he got to open for Van Morrison. So when I'm writing my bio, I'm writing something, I will say, I was in Charlie Gracie's band when we went on tour with Van Morrison. But I also know there are guys who will say, I toured with Van Morrison, which gives you a completely different vision. That's a completely different story. And that's lying. And if they catch you lying, that's not good. Am I correct? Like, don't bullshit in here. Don't lie. Don't exaggerate. There's a way to exaggerate factually or, coloring the story, but to imply that I went on the road with Van Morrison means that I played with Van Morrison, which is different.
Well,
Am I right?
People would even put in there, they would say, I went on tour with Van Morrison. And then I went and saw him. I went to a couple concerts, so I kind of was like on tour with them, or the guy that sells the T-shirts. But I'll tell you something, and I don't want to put that down, because if you can get near these bands, and this is a little outside of publicity, this is true of the music business and show business. Try to if you can get a job, as a lead singer and become famous that way right away, get hooked up with the local whatever. I don't care what you could find. Let's say it's a local venue where bands play. Well, at least you're around it, right?
That's right.
You're close to it. Get close to it. Somehow get close to what you want and get close.
Exactly.
And it can be a million things. You could work in a guitar shop. Well, who comes to a guitar shop? People that play guitar for bands. They got to get their instruments fixed. Get close to your dream. If you can't get it, just be near it. And that's why, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry. I'd rather hear what you have to say.
Well, I was just going to say, publicity was that for me. I didn't want to be a publicist. I really didn't. And it took a moment for me it was, by the way, very difficult for me to get out of it, because I was good at it and everyone wanted to hire me. And I turned down studio jobs. I could have been running publicity, president of, different studios easily. I'd been offered the job. I didn't want them to own my butt. I didn't want to put my butt in their chair. I did that at one point in my life where I sat in an office. It was torture for me. And one of my funny things is, I worked like 1 year in a publicity office, and I had a line on my ass. It took me years to get rid of, just from the crease of the fucking chair in my butt. That's what I don't want. I don't want my ass to have a crease in it. That's when people own you. That's why, I didn't want to do, but I just decided that I had more to offer, creatively. The thing is, when a publicist dies, okay, all they say in their bio is who they managed, who were their clients. They die and they give a list of celebrities. So even in death, and by the way, I'll tell you something interesting about, dying and publicity. Even when you die, your career and publicity comes into effect, because if you're the local guy, the plumber or whatever, you die, you have to pay the newspaper per word of the family will to put an obituary in. But if you die and you're famous or moderately famous or known, you get it free. They'll run an obituary. Right. So it never freaking ends, right? So, I don't know, you have to have great fortitude to continue in this business. You have to just keep going forward no matter what, and just keep going. One of my other friends, and I'll promote him a little right now, my buddy John Bakel, is with a band called Pattern Seeking Animals. And they've got a lot of band members from other bands. Well, John, he's in his 60s. He's been at this since he was 18. We laugh about it because he got a record deal with Columbia Records, and they're on their second record now. And these guys are all like, pushing 60. I mean, it's ridiculous. And, that doesn't happen. But, hopefully you make it younger,
Yeah, but here's the thing. I always thought, first of all, going back to that thing that you said where you're like, get around it. My first job with Charlie Gracie was playing bass, not guitar. And I ended up being a songwriter, a guitar player, and a producer for him. But I started as the bass player. And I know a lot of guys would turn their nose up. But the other thing is, when the phone call came in, he said, can you go on the road? I said, yes. He said,
there you go.
And I didn't check with anybody. I said, yes, my friend who played keyboard said, let me check with my wife, and guess who didn't get the gig? Because somebody else said yes. You get an opportunity, you say yes. And lastly, don't give up. As long as you don't give up, you're still going. Don't give up.
Well, yeah, and no truer than today. You just have to outlive everyone.
Yeah, just don't give up.
Yeah, I mean,
know?
Look, if it's your dream, you can't live without it. It's a rocky road, and it's tough, and it's hard on relationships. I mean, it's always funny. You can, if you're on a date and a girl says, "What do you do?" and you say you're an actor, the first thing they say is, "What have you worked on?" And if you can name something that they've seen, well, you're something. But if they can't, you're the biggest loser in town.
That's right.
They just, right? An actor without a credit is like, oh, you're one of those. Or like, I'm a musician. Oh, great. Who do you play with? Oh, just my garage, kind of hanging out. Oh, that's fucking great. Hey, it's been a great date,
Right.
See you later.
Yep.
So, you got to keep at it. You can learn about a lot of this stuff now, which is great online. I didn't want to be known for who I handled. I didn't want that to be my legacy. I wanted to be creative.
Well, you're way more creative. I mean, you are absolutely one of the most creative people I've ever worked with. And you also, what I love is, and what I tried to learn from you is the ability to pivot. The ability to move, the ability to go in another direction if you hit a wall, to pivot, to get around. I mean, George Washington only won one battle, and that was the last one. So, he won the war by losing everything, but I guess he won the, two battles or something, but most of the time he was losing. And that goes back to knowing the pivot, knowing which direction to go. And, the other thing is, you're a publicist. So then you become a kick-ass publicist. And then I can see where that would choke you out. I've had other things in my career that I did for a period of time. And that goes back to what you're saying. Maybe you don't want to work at the music store, but I did. And I learned a lot working at the music store. And then I took that and turned it into other things. I moved on to that, into working at a recording studio. I was in the music business for 25 years before I even got any name. I was a schlep for 25 years. It wasn't until my late 30s, early 40s that I actually started, and that goes back to being able to pivot and get a job, be near it, do it, be valuable. Like, if when I played with Hermits for a little bit, I was filling in for a guy.
Yeah.
Hey, if they said the tour bus is at 5:00, I'm there at 1:15. I show up with my clothes, my socks, my guitar cord, my tuner, my picks, my strings. These are all little things. And what I'm hoping today teaches, and the information you gave is so valuable, is there is a piece that most people look over, or overdo or underdo or have no clue what that is. And the piece of that puzzle is publicity. And I think you've given people an idea, at least so where they can say why they need publicity. And if they don't have a product,
do they need it at all?
Do they need it at all?
People are thinking, well, no one's heard of me. If you have a record company, they'll be doing publicity on, the band.
Right.
That's what they're handling. Just like when I worked on the movies, I was there to promote the movie, but I'd take the biggest actor in it and utilize that name to get the publicity. So the lower people on the cast would have personal publicists. And then one of the funny things is I always get the call like every day from the second or third tier actors from the publicist, the one that they're paying the retainer for. And they'd call me up and they'd say, hey, so Robert, how's it going? I'm doing great. So what do you got going? And I go, I don't know. What do you got going? Because what they're calling you for is to get what publicity you have so they can put it on their list to send to the client. So you go, yeah, I got the front page of the calendar, the LA Times calendar. Oh, okay. You hear them scribbling, right? So then they send that to the people and go, well, I got the cover of the calendar. No, you didn't. But the people are paying them. So, like any business, there's, ins and outs of it. But what you were saying about working in the music store, for me, publicity is what got me into making movies, because being on many of these films were like $50 million up movies on location. And by the way, I got those jobs because I had been such a good publicist, and I was working so well with talent and with the press that I was able to land the unit publicity job. Actually, just really briefly, one of my neighbors, her husband was head of publicity for Universal at that time. And I was talking to him at a party. His wife introduced us, and he said, "Oh, I hear, you do some publicity." He goes, "Gail Ann Hurd is looking for a writer who's a publicist." And I said, "Oh, that's me." So, let me set this up. So I went and I interviewed with Gail Ann Hurd, and I had no idea what a unit publicist really was. So I called up this other publicist who'd worked with her on The Abyss. And I said, "Hey, I heard you work with Gail on The Abyss." I said, "Boy, you did such a great job. I'd love to see your press kit just to see how, because you did such a great job." So she sent me her press kit, and I started asking her all these questions. So when I met with Gail Ann Hurd, I had an idea of like what the hell I was, and I just lied about everything. That's what you do. You tell her, you act like you know what you're doing. But when I did it, I had never seen well, I had a little bit from schooling, but I really got the lowdown, So you got to use your wits, man.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well,
got to use the wits.
And also bands can do a lot. They can learn how to write their own press release. They can get a little bit of brand name. Go get a gig. Go to the local paper. Tell them about, come up, like you said, come up with a story other than, I always tell bands in booking or publicity or anything, look, every band says, book my band, and then the question is, okay, why? And then their answer is because we're good. Well, no, you're supposed to say because 100 people are going to come and buy your beer if you book us.
That's
or,
right. That's all
or my grandmother came from Scotland. This is true. She was known as the Songbird of Scotland, and Andrew Carnegie brought her over and funded her and everything. I use that in my story, Yeah. My dad was a champion horse trainer. I use that. My mom was an opera singer who studied under Helen Jetson. So there's 4 lines, and I haven't even talked about me yet. That and alone, I would take things like that and go to my local paper. In fact, not knowing anything about publicity when I was a kid, I saw a big band that was bigger than me, a local band, get a big story in the paper. So I thought, I got to get a story in the paper. And I got a little story about my band in the paper because it was at the time when New Wave was just getting big. And I said, we're a New Wave band. And they put New Wave rockers to play in Lancaster. And it had our picture. Yeah. And I took that picture and I built my whole career off of that.
Yeah, that's
that article.
Yeah.
So, so before you go, another thing, an agent told me one time, actually, it was when I was in California out there with you, and I knew this agent, and he said, the problem is, you'll know when you need an agent is when you can't handle your bookings. Then you need an agent. Every band thinks that an agent's going to get them work. No, you got to get the work. You got to get it going, and when you become something that's worth, that they can then capitalize on your success and blow you up. Like, you got to have calls coming in before an agent's interested.
Actually, to be honest, an agent rarely gets you work. What an agent, they're supposed to, but they rarely do. What they're there best for is to be an attorney, a free attorney. By the way, you may need that too. But when you become the big guys and you talk about having a successful celebrity career, you're giving away a good 30% of your money.
Easy.
Because you're giving 20% to the manager, 10% to the agent. And then the publicist is on a retainer, and then you have a business manager and an accountant, and your guru. I don't know,
Yep.
So you're going to spend a lot of money. But there's different levels of people that were going to be listening to this. There are people that have a legitimate album and things that they can promote, and there's people that are just trying to get started with their musical career. I think you hold off on that publicity, unless you really have something, great hook. But as I said, everybody has some crazy story their parents or them. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then there's all sorts of tricks too. You can do an event to raise money for charity. Right now, if you're a band, do a coronavirus mask event and show up and people can drop a mask off or money, the money from the band, from the concert or whatever will go to help the local hospitals. I mean, you're going to see tons of this, I just want to say that I want to give you great appreciation and thanks from the world for doing your nighttime concert for free that you've been doing for weeks during the coronavirus. And what a great comfort it is for people to get a moment to relax and hear music, which is so soothing. And you're so bloody talented on that guitar. And I turn it on. Yeah, I love you, man. You're brilliant. And I turn that on while I'm working on projects and listen to it. And I know people have been very kind in donating money. It's actually priceless what you're doing. And I know you're not doing it for that, but we all got to survive. And I appreciate you.
Well, I thank you so much. And that's actually goes to that whole point of pivoting. The only thing I know in this world is that I'm sincere and I can play the guitar a little bit. So when this whole thing started, I lost all my work and I immediately said, well, where can I play the guitar? I didn't even worry about money. I'm not worrying about the bills. What can I do right now? And what I can do right now is go entertain people and then let the chips fall where they will. You have to, underneath everything. I mean, I bet you, Milli Vanilli had a hell of a publicist, but once people realized that they were phony, they were done. So, you make sure that whatever it is you're doing it from a real angle, from a real passion, not just to fleece somebody out of a ticket or a CD or something like that, And I think that if you go along and you learn. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, to steal a line from a movie, if you build it, they will come.
That's right. Well, Robert, and I met you back, we go back more than a decade now. And,
I did like 20 years, right? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. It's getting up there, but we've worked on numerous projects. Yeah, you've had me work on some of the movies that you just talked about coming out. I've been fortunate enough to get a couple of songs in there, and we've done videos together. And I interviewed Reverend Horton Heat.
Yes. For
and we've done all kinds of stuff.
By the way, that's how I met you. I met you because it's just so weird. And by the way, this is a publicity thing right here for you. Why did I want to interview Quentin? It was one thing. The name of his band was the Reach Around Rodeo Clowns.
I know.
And I said, I got to know who these guys are. So they weren't just called, the Dirt Singers or whatever the hell you want to call your band. The Reach Around Rodeo Clowns. If you're going to come up with a name, I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect for Girls and Corpses. So I listened to the music and then I went, wow, rockabilly and all this, fucking fantastic. So that's how we hooked up. And then I found out you were a terrific editor and you would put together these really dark, twisted, edited videos for your songs, Bodies in My Basement and, Cocaine and Cadillacs. And,
Road to Hell. We did Road to Hell. And what was the surfing one? Bad Dudes Are Surfing. So it was always your music, and then you would edit these fun things, and I would put them up, and then of course you did the interview the Reverend Horton Heat. I did a lot of that when we were doing Girls and Corpses magazine, was putting people in the same profession together to interview each other. What the hell am I going to ask Reverend Horton Heat? You wind up doing an interview like, what's your inspiration and how did you get started? You do all the same shit. You get someone in the business and you're going to get some fun questions. Even better, sometimes I'll get a band member from the band to interview the other guy in the band because then they know all this shit. They know stuff on the road and stuff that happened, and that's a fun thing to do. But Girls and Corpses was put in a lovely little coffin and finally buried when publishing went under.
And now that I've just, and we still continue to sell it, but now that the Postal Service looks like it's going to go under, I'm glad I pivoted, like you said, and turned Girls and Corpses into a brand, which is now making movies. So that's how that story goes.
Well, I'll tell you, it's just constantly evolving and keep moving forward.
Yep.
But I gotta say, this has been very informative, and there's a lot of great information. I'm sure people are going to appreciate it, and I'd like to talk to you some more about some other things in the future, because, you know, if you're not familiar with Mr. Robert Rhine, get familiar with him. Get familiar with the brand Girls and Corpses. This guy's got all kinds of things going on. You can learn a lot from him. So I really appreciate you taking your time today and sharing your knowledge with us. And what's next, Mr. Rhine? I don't know, but all right. Well, we're going to talk to you. I said thanks again.
All right, buddy. So good job.